Hi, my name is Daniel Kitts. I'm the online editor for TVO.org, and I'm joined today by Idil Burale. She ran for City Council in Toronto in Ward 1. Idil, thanks for joining me today right after election night.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the reason I want to talk to you is that you have been on our program and on our website before talking about how marginalized you often feel as a young person, as a Canadian Somali woman from the political process, from other parts of society in general. And then shortly after you were on our program the last time, you decided to do what a lot of disengaged youth do not do, which is actually run for office. So I wanted to talk to you about that process and how it affected your views, for good or for ill, about our democratic process. So I guess the first question I should ask is, why did you decide to run for City Council in Toronto in Ward 1?
Really, judging from my experience, it wasn't really a big leap from going from being an advocate in the suburbs and talking about the issues, especially predominantly the division between the suburbs and the urban center, which was politically manufactured but did have some sense of reality in our city. And I think the reason that, for me, it felt there was a deep need and an urge to run was feeling like the future of our transit, as well as the future of inequities and opportunities in the city, was determinant in the type of leadership we would have at City Council. So as somebody who has been a close observant of City Council for the past 4 years, and noticing how my councilor in particular was voting, I felt like his voting record didn't match the kind of investments I wanted to see in my community, and therefore, if he wasn't going to do it, I couldn't just complain about it on the sidelines. I should run and advocate for what ideals that I would want to see in my community and see how that would go.
Fair enough. Now, when you were last on our program, we asked you and the other guests some of your sort of adjectives to describe your frustration with politics and democracy as it is practiced today, and two words that you used were inauthentic and short-sighted. Inauthentic politicians, short-sighted decisions. And, you know, in the process of campaigning and talking to voters and trying to win them over to your ideas, did you get any insight as to why the political process we have tends to lead to that kind of inauthenticity and short-sightedness?
Yeah, no, in short, I think we often think like Rousseau, but act like Kant, right? So I think we have ideals. The way we speak is not directly linked to the way we live and the way we process information. So, for instance, the biggest issue I had in the campaign was the Finch LRT versus the Finch subway. And for most people, they wanted a subway, but these were also the same people who complained about paying too much taxes. And for the life of me, I couldn't get people to understand that there's a complete disconnect between wanting lower taxes, wanting to get rid of the land transfer tax, and yet thinking a subway plan on Finch would be possible. So I remain authentic throughout the process in explaining that I have nothing against subways. I would like them too, but how are we going to pay for it? And do you also understand that we wouldn't get it in at least 30 years time span because of the lack of density and because of other projects like Scarborough, the downtown relief line, and Shepherd, who have priorities before we get to Finch. So if you're okay with that, and if you're okay with the fact that we're going to pay more in the long term for it, then yes, sure, by all means vote for the other guy. But if you want lower taxes and if you want transit relief right now, then the Finch LRT is the already funded, already environmentally assessed, shovel-ready plan that we have. But for some reason, a lot of people were, the Fords did a really good job at poisoning the discussion around transit file, and for the life of me, I couldn't get people to understand that it wasn't a streetcar, and that what happened on St. Clair had been rectified by the city, and they learned from their mistakes so that it wouldn't reoccur in other transit projects. That was the hardest part. A lot of times running for office felt like the allegory of the cave. Plato's allegory of the cave, where I went into it and my campaign team did a lot of research, and we looked at all the voting records and we looked at all the plans, and we thought we understood the issue and facts would win the day, but that wasn't the case. At the end of the day, it was feelings and entitlement that won the day.
Well, obviously, I'm sure you stayed quite close to your desire to stick to the issues and stick to the facts, but did you ever find yourself doing what you hate about politicians, like in the midst of talking to somebody or having to answer a question, or were you able to steer clear of that?
Yes, that became a lot of times. So a lot of people have low information on how to vote in municipal elections. They're really well informed on the mayoralty race, very poorly informed on the council race. So oftentimes when I knock on people's door, I would get asked two questions: what party are you with, and what mayoral candidate are you supporting? So having to explain to people that there are no party lines at City Hall confused them furthermore, right? Because then they couldn't put you in a category. The next question was, what mayor do you support? I live in Ward 1. It is in the heart of Ford Nation. That ward actually went to Doug Ford. So a lot of people would say, I want nothing to hear from you, I'm voting for Doug Ford. And getting people to understand that when they go vote, there's 3 votes that they're making, mayor, councilor, was very hard. A lot of people said, no, I'm just going to vote for the mayor, and that's it. So in the beginning, I tried to explain to people that, listen, if you look at my policies and you look at Doug Ford's, clearly we're very different. And my policies are more aligned with Olivia Chow. But near the end, we just found ourselves saying we would work with any mayoral candidate, right? Because we had a hard time just fighting for our own candidacy, that we couldn't get into the element of mayoral races. So that was one part where I felt like I had to give in somehow. But there was also a lot of casual racism and a lot of ageism that I had to, keep my lip bit for and try to figure out, okay, well, let's get back to the issues. Let's get back to how you're voting amidst that discussion. So it was interesting, yes. But I hope at the end of the day I remain authentic to the process and to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned racism and ageism, and I kind of want to go there next. I started the interview by mentioning, how often you feel marginalized as someone from the Canadian Somali community, and as a woman as well, and as a young person, and obviously feeling marginalized from the political process. And I'm wondering if running and taking part in the process the way you did in any way changed your views about that, in either it reinforced what you believed or it dispelled certain things that you believed.
Yeah, it really is twofold. In one part, I do feel alienated by the process, and I've had to deal with a lot of identity politics, right, where a lot of people, because I'm running in Ward 1, it is not a predominantly Somali Canadian community. It is mostly South Asian. A lot of people have told me, you're the wrong color, or you should be running in Ward 2 where you would have more chances based on, my ethnic makeup. And then there was a lot of ageism, just a lot of people who said, look, kid, you look great, but you're too young, come again when you're older. So trying to navigate that was what kind of disillusioned me from the process, and also the fact that I underestimated how deeply entrenched Ford Nation sentiments are in my community, and at the end of the day, we couldn't even get to the issues at heart of the debate because everything was basically centered around, do you support Doug Ford or not? If you do, great, we'll vote for you. If not, then we don't want to hear anything. So that part alienated me from the process. But then on the other hand, I've had a lot of young people, and mostly women, young women of color, who said how proud they are, and that just in seeing me run, it has kind of reinvigorated their sense of belonging in the city or in this social construct we have in Toronto, but also it gave them the courage to run after their dreams and see that anything is possible. So it's really twofold. I've personally felt I think I went into an idealist and a believer that things can change in the political process if you engage. And I kind of came out of it as an agnostic. But at the same time, I'm very fortunate that in my running, it inspired other people. And it also brought people who've never been engaged in the political process. I mean, I've had a lot of voters who said they've never voted, but that they would vote this time. Or a lot of friends and families who never did anything remotely civic, who are now helping me run my campaign and who learned a lot about, flyer drop-in and met their neighbors and learned a lot about how city government works and how policies are run at the city. So it's been an opportunity for a lot of people, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. And I do feel I've changed and I'm not the same person I was at the beginning.
Interesting. Now, you've also been frustrated at how the media sometimes portrays marginalized communities and how it can sort of its role in your view, excluding some marginalized voices. During this campaign, you were endorsed by a few media organizations, including the Toronto Star, which is, for those that don't know, basically the largest newspaper in Toronto and actually in Canada by circulation. Did that how did those endorsements affect your sense of not only the media but the degree to which broader society is open to including and acknowledging people from more marginalized communities?
Yeah, I think the endorsements were great in acknowledging that, and in the way it was written and reinforced that I was young and that I was Somali Canadian, which is good in one way because then other people who fit those demographics can find themselves reflected in that. But at the same time, can also be discouraging for other people who may think, well, you're too young or you're this. But I was overwhelmed by the amount of endorsement that we got. We were not expecting that. You know, as a first-time runner in a ward that had 12 participants, and especially a ward that doesn't get much media scrutiny, I didn't expect to get as much endorsement as we got. So we're really proud of that, and I think those endorsements helped solidify, mostly for Somali Canadian youth, their role and identity in the city. So that was helpful in that regard.
Mm-hmm. So if I could just be clear on something, so while on the one hand the media is to be applauded for acknowledging people like yourself, we still sometimes fall into the habit of labeling you as, you know, from a particular community as opposed to just being, hey, here's a great person that you should vote for.
Yes, I actually lamented that with friends when I got the Star endorsement, where most people were very happy and were excited, but at the same time I had this feeling in my gut, which was like, did they have to use those adjectives to describe me? You know, could I not have been a promising candidate? And I also noticed, judging from the other candidates, for me as a female candidate, like my gender, my age, and my ethnicity were reinforced, whereas for the other candidates, it was more about their expertise or qualifications and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's related to maybe me being young and not having as much experience, and therefore that's why they use the other adjectives to describe me, or if in the same token it is, well, you know, here's what I hope that's not all I put out when I sell myself as a candidate, but it's a double-edged sword, right? You're happy for the endorsement and for the acknowledgement. You also understand, in part, you got that because you're young and Somali Canadian. But at the same time, I did wish that it would be a more generic description as a promising candidate with, you know, serious credentials rather than a young woman who has credentials of Somali Canadian.
Right. Fair enough. So you did not win Ward 1, but you got to take part in the political process. You got to get your message out there. Was it worth it?
It was. It really was worth it. I was happy. I was happy to meet my neighbors. I was happy to talk about the things that really mattered to me. And it was a really phenomenal experience to take part in the political process and to know that, you know, I didn't just complain about something. I had the opportunity to change my community, and I took that on. And I'm very proud of myself for that.
Overall, how has the experience affected your relative optimism and pessimism about our democracy right now? Do you feel a little bit more optimistic, about the same, a little bit more pessimistic?
I feel, you know, I see the value in public service. I don't know if I truly see the value in politics. And for me, I think I'm going to focus the rest of my experience and endeavors working on making public service more accessible or better representative, not necessarily taking the political route as a result. But I think there's many ways we can impact our community, and it doesn't always involve running for office. So for me, I think I know I will be involved in the political arena. What role I will play is not yet determined, but I for once, having gone through this experience, can tell you that I don't think I would run again for office. And that's not at all related to the fact that we lost, but it's just, it takes a lot out of you, a lot of emotional, and your family and friends and people who are helping you. And for me, I could take the stress, but it was harder to see other people worrying or stressing or feeling bad about things that would happen, and you not having any control over that is a bit why I wouldn't run again. But also, at the end of the day, I'm someone who wants to make an impact, and I want someone who wants to influence the policy and policy process. I do not like the other sides of politics that one has to tolerate in the midst of getting that. So that's how I feel right now after having gone through that process.
Fair enough. Is there anything else about sort of the journey of the past several months when you've been running, anything else about it that you think you want to say or people should know about?
I definitely would say, if you're not happy with something, you can play a role in changing it, and it doesn't always have to be big. It could always be small. But at the end of the day, we get the representatives we deserve. Whether we participate or do not participate in the political process, that is what happens. I underestimated how hard it is to overcome incumbency in Toronto politics. And we saw with this election that most incumbents got reelected, even the really bad ones. So I think at the end of the day, I was somebody who was very politically involved, and I realized that not everybody is like me. So it becomes a question of how do you instead not be so politically focused and on Twitter and everything, but instead talk to your neighbors about the issues and about seeing each other as neighbors and seeing what we could do together outside of the political process.
Fair enough. Well, Idil Burale, thank you so much for taking the time today to speak to me, and best of luck in whatever you decide to do next.
Thank you very much for having me, and all the best to you.